Welcome, human sacrifices, and yeah, that's pretty much what we've got this week. Welcome to episode 483 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 20th of June, 2023, and featuring Children of Earth Day 5, written by Russell T Davies, and starring John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness and Eve Miles as Gwen Cooper. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and with me are color commentator Alex Fireheart
Oh, this was joyless.
and technical director Mad Matt Winchell.
Why do we like Captain Jack again?
How's everybody's week been?
Not too bad. Thankfully, the anti-inflammatories that the doctor gave me last week have definitely been helping with my right arm.
Woo.
Um, which to me says that I probably won't need uh to get the scan done. Of course, it's funny because the people that I'm supposed to go to get the scan done keep bugging me, and I'm like, the doctor specifically said to not bother getting it scanned unless it's like still playing up in like 3 weeks time.
It's
So
only and it's
I'm
only been
like,
1 week and it's already getting better. So
yeah. So to me, it's like, what would be the point in making an appointment for 3 weeks from now, or like 3 weeks from then?
if you have to cancel
Um,
it,
yeah, it's like I'm better off just, okay, now I need it, I should probably do it instead of, getting it ahead of time, booking it ahead of time and then canceling. Um, yeah, again, he was specifically like, take these, give it a couple of weeks. If it's still playing up, go get a scan done. So it's like, you know,
I mean, as long as
um,
it continues to get better to the point that you finally don't need the stuff anymore, that's honestly a good direction. They don't need it.
yeah, like it's been playing up less at work as well, thankfully. Like the cold still gets into it and makes it annoying, but nowhere near as annoying as before I was on these meds. So that's like, oh, thank God. This is actually helping. So again, to me, that's basically confirming this is probably just being up in the food court, mostly doing the bin runs and that, which I don't even know how heavy they are. It's just they're usually a pain in the ass to get out of the bins half the time because of how full they can get. Just doing that constantly was
Possibly
probably
pulled
just
something. Yeah.
adding up. Yeah. So it's like it was just that adding up and I needed a break from that. And now I'm just not uh going back up there anyway, so I'll probably never have that issue again. Because like last year when my shoulders were playing up in a different way, because that was just soreness, but they were just constantly kind of sore, but it would fade, come back, fade, come back. But it wasn't this
Mm.
kind of a thing. I took like all of March off, and by the time I came back, I was fine. So it's like,
Yeah.
there we go.
Alrighty. That about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, for my end, I finally got in contact with a coworker of mine that wants to sell a vehicle. He's planning to have it hopefully cleaned out by sometime around tomorrow. And then we're going to, because I believe we share a shift, or at least have shifts close to each other's tomorrow, we'll be talking about payment, getting it brought over, etc. Also, I have ordered a trike through a bike store in another town not too far from here. Come to find out, the owner and a couple of the workers actually don't live in town, and they travel past us just to get home lately because of car construction or road construction. So they literally are going to deliver it free of charge. And I was just sitting there like, oh, I expect to at least pay them at least a few dollars just to deliver it. No, they're just going to drop it off for free. But it's practically a small detour and back on the road again. Like, oh, well, that's very nice of them. Which reminds me, I need to write a check before I go to bed tonight so that the rest of the money can be delivered. For some reason, it didn't want to take the full amount on my card, but it took at least the half amount. So that's all getting sorted out in, like, hopefully the next couple weeks or so. And I want to send that vehicle over to our family technician who can hopefully get that sorted in a relatively short amount of time. Hopefully, I'm assuming. My mother, I may hold back on letting him have a work on it because my mother has an open week next month for like the majority of a week, and that'd be like the best time to try and get in and try and do another test for my license. Because if I can get my license, a lot of doors open up very quickly for me, especially through people I know.
Definitely.
There's people I know who can offer me literally full-time work, mostly driving, and like $16 or up per hour.
Okay.
For like basically full-time. The job is basically collecting samples from like food factories, icing them, putting them away properly, and then going on to the next place to collect more samples. That's the entirety of the job. The only air quotes hard part about it is the fact that you have to drive from location to location from long stretches, and then you just have to handle the samples properly and pack them on ice and put them away in the back of your vehicle, which is given to you by the company. You go to like there's like several like locations where all the workers who do the deliveries meet up. We get our company vehicle, which they also, I believe, pay the gas for.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
And then you go off to all these locations.
I was gonna ask, like, do they do anything about wear and tear or gas or anything? But if it's a company vehicle, that is a huge difference in terms of not fucking, not taking money out of your pocket with caring for your own car.
Yeah, that's just getting there and getting back home that I have to pay for on my own. I know for a fact you get a company vehicle for these deliveries, or pickups rather, and I believe they take care of gas, but I would have to find out when I get there and hopefully get in. I know at least 2 people that apparently that are working for this company within our state. So yeah, I have at least 2 ins already. If I can get on that.
That's good.
But in the meantime, I'm trying to find at least local work, hopefully soon, and I also want to talk to one of my coworkers about that tomorrow too. Again, not disclosing where I work and all that good stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've been sitting here quiet because I noticed Freema Agyeman was trending on Twitter, and I was looking to see why. Apparently, the Twitter account Doctor Who Filming Locations shared information that basically there's a small actor, they say small, possibly female, meaning just based on size and frame, that the filming crew doesn't want people around the filming to see who it is. So people are speculating that it's either Freema Agyeman or Georgia Tennant. Because Georgia tweeted that, or she posted on some sort of social media that she was going to Wales recently, which I don't think she would have done if it was actually for a Doctor Who episode, to be honest.
Yeah,
hard to say, but yeah, you never know.
So people are also speculating that it could be pretty much anyone that's around, slightly more than 5 foot. Although we really don't even have that much information. Just Freema and Georgia happen to be the same height. So it'd be nice if it's someone high profile like that, but that's not even rumor mill worth. So
yeah, I'm trying to think. Vehicle stuff, job stuff. Is that about it? I think that's about it for me. Oh, the package I've been waiting for. They finally announced earlier, like midday today, that it's finally at my local mail delivery post office. So tomorrow I should be hopefully getting that and probably popping that open and having a look. I think that's about it for me though. That's been my week.
Yeah, I don't. My latest update is I forget if I mentioned this, but ever since I went out of state for a weekend and left the AC off, my floors have been like weirdly shaped and fucked up because the layer of fake floor underneath the layer of fake floor that I walk on is basically either warped or like parts of it have like expanded. And I think have issues like I can't get into my closet and parts of the floor are coming off because I keep tripping over them. So it's going to be very interesting when I move out and I'm like, yeah, this is not my fault. Do not if I'm getting any of my
Quality
security
make.
deposit back, please do not penalize me for the floor.
Well, they shouldn't be able to. That's literally their mistake for having such a bonkers floor thing that it basically broke and melted because you didn't have the air on for a few days.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of annoyed that, of course, this happens on, the summer that I'm moving out. If it was an earlier summer, then I could just submit a ticket and be like, yeah, can you fix this? It's not my fault. Whereas now there's not much point because by the time they would fix it, I'd be already gone. Um,
Well, you can still be nice and
Otherwise,
submit a ticket that needs to be fixed, but yeah, it's not going to help you
mhm,
right now.
yeah. Otherwise, I've been making good progress on my master's thesis. Not much progress on anything else. Um, but I'm trying to be more strict on my to-do list. I feel like I've been taking a lot of stress naps lately,
Mm.
and to the point where I'm it's tempting me to email my doctor and be like, "Yeah, can I get something else just so that I actually stop going to sleep and finish things I need to get done?" But otherwise, things are going all right.
Yeah, I didn't make a new opening yet because I got called in twice this week, by the way.
Mm,
So my 4 days off became 2 days off very suddenly.
Yeah.
okay.
But
No,
next, I have like every other day off now until the 28th, and then the 28th on, I have like at least 3 days off. So
mm,
I should have some time in there to be able to finally edit a new opening together for us.
okay. All right. On today's show, we have birthdays and a very little bit of news. We have one item under Geek Talk, and then we have our episode summary, review, final thoughts, and rating. And yes, ratings this week.
Yes, ratings. We
We will
actually have
be
a rating.
rating all of
Yeah.
Children of Earth today.
Mm-hmm.
So starting with Alex with the birthdays.
Okay. Just checking something real quick. Yes. So on the 14th of June, we have Julia Joyce, who was baby Rose Tyler in Father's Day, turned 25. On the 15th of June, we have Michelle Greenridge, who is playing an as of yet undisclosed recurring role in Series 14. She turned 53. On the 16th, we have Carol Ann Ford, who played Susan in seasons 1 and 2 and The Five Doctors. Turned 83. On the 17th, we have Jodie Whittaker, who was the Doctor for the entirety of the Chibnall era. Turned 41. And also on the 17th, we have Arthur Darvill, who played Rory Williams from series 5 to 7. Also turned 41. Huh.
I hope they had
realized they were the
birthday
same age.
parties on the Broadchurch set.
um, On the 18th, we have, oh god, these damn Welsh names, eh? They could be like Llewellyn. They could be Llewellyn.
I think it's pronounced
Mhm.
Llewellyn,
Mm.
or at least that's how I hear English people pronounce it in Big Finish behind the scenes for other people.
Mm. So I'm going to assume that's correct then. So Llewellyn Reese played the Time Lord President in The Deadly Assassin.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Um,
And now look at the name. Yeah, Llewellyn.
mm.
I need
Would
to
have
slow down my
been
speech pattern in order to say it right.
would have been 122, but died in 1994 at the age of 92.
Still had a good run.
Hmm. And finally, on the 19th, we have Millie Gibson, who is set to play Ruby Sunday in Series 14, who turned 19. So, happy birthday to Julia Michelle, Carol, Jodie, Arthur, Llewellyn, and Millie.
All right, going on to news. We have our big piece of news, although, well, okay, that's kind of ironic in a couple of ways, but it's in the form of a press release because I've seen the exact same wording in multiple places. But Lenny Rush has been announced as appearing in the next series of Doctor Who. Lenny recently won a BAFTA at the age of 14. Has starred in Dodger and A Christmas Carol. Won the BAFTA for Am I Being Unreasonable, which I have not heard of, but apparently he had a starring role. And he is going to be appearing in the next season. I don't know whether
From
this
what
is
from what I read of the details, that he got that BAFTA from that show, and it's a comedy program.
okay. I would say being the it does say comedy program. You're right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say being a BAFTA, like for all I know, it could be fucking on stage.
No, comedy program last year.
But they don't give much role of who Rush is playing, other than that the character is named Morris. And yeah, that's all that we have. He looks smaller than a typical 14-year-old in the publicity photo, and is riding a scooter, or might technically be considered a hoverboard nowadays, even though they don't actually hover. Or a Segway. I don't fucking know.
Segway.
Yeah.
It's basically a newer version of a Segway. It's
Right.
still got the handlebars and everything, so.
But that's all we have for that news. And then our other piece of news, this comes from 10 Acre Films, even though it's not a film. It's actually a Doctor Who nonfiction book, Pull to Open, 1962 to 1963, the inside story of how the BBC created and launched Doctor Who. So, with that title, I don't really need to go down the blurb. It's pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. Written by Paul Hayes, and is being released on July 24 and is available for pre-order. And there's no Big Finish releases, which means that is all of the news. And I already covered the only rumor that I'm aware of, which brings us on to Geek Talk.
To which I have one particular item. This item is a game called 20 Minutes Till Dawn, and I'm going to try to accomplish 20 Minutes Till Dawn review in 20 seconds. So here we go. It stinks, the controllers don't work well with it, and Steam won't let me have my bunny back. Thank you.
Why did they say you played too much of it, or?
Yeah, I barely got over 2 hours in it.
More than 20 minutes.
A good like hour and a half of that felt like wasted time, so I tried to get my money back, and they won't let me have it.
Gotcha.
Mm.
It's sad though because that first half hour felt really promising. That's how I got to the end of my first 20 minutes was within that first half hour or so. And it's like the Vampire Survivors game, but it's much more retroized. It's like lower color count, etc. And it's more eldritch horror as opposed to just normal gothic horror stereotypes.
Mm.
And you can just not only select the character, but you can also select their weapon to start with. And yeah, it just stinks. Like it doesn't want to work well with my controllers either. I think it's a combination of both. It's too sensitive to my controller, and once in a while they'll just start going around crazy like if the controller stick is just slightly out of the middle. And there's also, I think, some sort of effect of it doesn't want to let my character stop moving when I'm shooting a gun. So they're basically just constantly in ice slide mode, like the entire game. And if you've ever played a game that has an ice level, you know exactly how annoying this entire game is.
Yep. Speaking of controllers, I've recently finally tested, and I bought I think it was a PS4 controller that I bought. Oh, well, definitely over a year ago now. I'm trying to remember if it was 1 year or 2 years ago. Well, basically, I used it for a month to play to play Dragon Ball Z Fighters, and I didn't have time to use it much after that. I recently uh went to well, at one point in there I tried to use it and it didn't work, and I assumed that it needed to be charged. I recently tested it a little more extensively, and literally when it's literally plugged in to charge, I can see it light up as if it's turning on, but it never gets enough charge to actually play anything with it anymore, even though it's barely used.
Yeah.
So very
Wow.
frustrating.
Yeah, that just sounds like really awful controller design.
Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I can't remember if it was refurbished or new, if that even makes a difference. So I'm debating if it's even worth it to try buy another
used,
one.
but supposedly air quotes cleaned.
Right. So I'm like, I know that the PC, of course, prefers you to buy an Xbox controller, but I'm much more familiar with PlayStation ones. So I'm like,
I would agree with you on that, but honestly, after a year or two of being stuck with a 360 controller, I honestly can say that I'm fine with it.
Okay.
That's one of my two controllers. My other controller is a Steam controller.
I will say part of the reason I'm thinking of it is I have Final Fantasy VII Remake downloaded on my computer now, and I don't know if I can play I don't know how it'll feel to try play a PlayStation game with an Xbox controller if I go that route.
It'll be the same button setups. It's just gonna be a different shape in your hands. That's the majority of it.
Yeah. Like, I feel like I know some people who mainly prefer to just try to make a PlayStation controller work because they find the Xbox One's too bulky.
Yeah, I tried that. I tried that for like 15 years. No, not 15, 10. I tried to do that for 10 years to get PlayStation-like controllers to work. Doesn't work. Like, either they're all sloppily made, so they all die really quickly, or they just barely work, like, ever, and you have to get a bunch of weird programs that bog down your computer. It just becomes not worth it, and you're just better off just getting a controller that instantly plugs in, instantly works, just does the job. Just saying from experience. I'm sure some people have had some alternate experiences where it actually works fairly easily for them, but I have never been that person that's that lucky. No, I just have to get used to it and adapt to it.
Did you want to say anything about, other than the issues you've had, anything about the intended story or gameplay for 20 minutes until dawn, or is that about it?
That honestly is about it. Instead of Vampire Survivors, it's an eldritch horror, basically. You're just trying to survive through waves of enemies and the occasional boss monster until the 20 minutes are up, and then you've successfully survived. That's it. And I managed to do it once, and only the once. And despite unlocking 3 characters and 3 different weapons, I've only been able to do it with 1 character and 1 weapon in particular. And it's not even the first one either, which also helps it suck even harder. Because I kept going back to that first one and just kept getting completely roundhouse kicked to the face in the first 10 minutes. So it's just like, this is not worth it.
So in that case, that brings us to our summary with Alex.
Yep.
All right. Oh, I actually closed that a little early. I can just open this and should be right back. Yep, there is. All right, so start in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, last we left off, Torchwood failed miserably trying to stop the 456 from taking the children and got all of Thames house gassed and killed as a result, with us now seeing the aftermath of that decision. Yanto's sister takes in as many kids as she can handle, having gotten word from Yanto before his death not to trust the government with this vaccine scheme they're doing to try and nab kids. As the US military takes more control in the situation, Colonel Augustus from UNIT asks the 456 what they want the kids for in the first place, with the 456 essentially admitting the children give off chemicals that are like drugs for them, right before the UK military are mobilized to grab kids. Meanwhile, Jack admits defeat and tells Gwen to let Reese know it's all over, talking Frobisher into sending Gwen and Reese back to Wales before surrendering himself to the police, as his daughter and her son are released from custody, and his daughter is starting to be clued in to what's going on. Frobisher is then told that his daughters have been chosen and to also be taken by the 456 despite his protests, leading to him acquiring a gun, going home, and killing them all, and then himself. All the while, his personal assistant Bridget Spears meets with Lois, the full context of which we don't find out until later. To keep the unhappy train rolling, Gwen contemplates having an abortion while the kids start to be taken, their parents left screaming for them at the schools. Gwen and Andy, their cop friend Andy, goes to Yanto's sister Rhiannon and her husband Johnny's place to let them know of Yanto's death, and also to help them get the kids to safety in an abandoned warehouse, with Johnny staying back to mobilize the local men to fight the military to slow them down a bit, with Andy joining in as well. Meanwhile, Jack is set free by Agent Johnson and the soldiers in her employ, and given the technology necessary to potentially deal with the 456. While Grease, Gwen, Rhiannon, and the kids are forced to run away again when the military find them, Jack is forced to make the impossible decision of sacrificing his own grandson to use him as a focus for the resonance for the frequency used to kill Clem, but sending it back at the 456, violently killing both them and his grandson. Back with the politicians, the Prime Minister prepares to deflect blame onto the Americans, only for Bridget to reveal she'd taken the Torchwood contact lenses earlier, and had been recording them ever since, having been told how they work by Lois. The implication being the Prime Minister's career is basically over at this point. The episode then skips 6 months ahead, in which a now obviously pregnant Gwen going with Reese to meet Jack, who is planning to leave Earth with no expectation of when he'll be coming back, with Gwen giving back Jack his vortex manipulator, which somehow survived Torchwood being destroyed, before leaving, with a distraught Gwen and Reese going home to end the episode.
All right, you got it in 3:19. I saw it when you stopped just before I clicked the button.
All right, our favorite parts of or what we liked about the serial, starting with Alex.
Ooh, that's gonna be hard for this one, and not even because this is bad.
Sure, it's what we liked about the episode, and then rating the serial.
Right.
True, because we've talked about what we liked about the serial.
This particular episode. You know what? The fact, and I've brought it up before, but it's just a continuing thread, and the fact that Rhiannon and Johnny have been here the whole time, and just the fact that they still have a presence in this episode, is just really nice. Because again, like especially after Yanto died, I would have expected them to just have like they find out and then that's it, and then we never see them again. But they're pretty much visible throughout even this episode. Like Rhiannon's trying to get help Gwen and Reese get the kids to safety. Johnny picks a fight with the military to slow them down a bit. Like the fact that they're still active, especially because they're just now they are active participants, whereas they were previously just kind of there, and like they were still like good to have, but they were just kind of there prior, and now they're active participants in what's going on.
Yeah, but before they kind of represented what the average person in the world was seeing, and then here they're taking that next step. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on that?
That's about it.
All right, Matt, what you liked?
Just for the episode?
Yep.
Honestly, once again, a very nice even keel pacing. Like nothing dragged too long and nothing overstayed its welcome. Thankfully, there's other issues I definitely have with this episode, but the pacing of it and making sure things move along at a decent click is not an issue here. It'll at least keep your attention through that.
Yeah.
True.
So that's
my
basic overall good thing. Yep.
So for mine, I'm going to say I like how, even though it didn't seem that way at first, we do kind of start to see the fallout of what happened in day 4. So we have these unlikely allies, these people that were, opposed to Torchwood throughout the entire story. They're kind of coming along and saying, okay, this shit cannot be just left as it is.
Mm-hmm. Multiple parties,
starting to. Sorry?
Multiple parties, in fact.
Yep. And basically coming together and saying, okay, what can we do to stop this shit in its tracks and get things resolved properly, mostly properly, which I'm sure will be mentioned quite a bit to come. Speaking of which, least favorite things about the episode. Starting with Alex.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the elephant in the room, but I just feel like this was far too fucking bleak. Like, and I feel like part of the issue is that there's like very bleak thing, and then you think there's going to be a bit of levity, and then it goes right back to like, because like, the guy Frobisher kills his family and then himself. And then you think there's going to be a bit of levity with Andy because, he basically exists to kind of be comic relief to a point. So that you think there's going to be some levity. And then Gwen goes into the I'm probably going to have an abortion thing. And then from there, like, the kids start getting taken. So it's like, there's no...
Yeah, the levity with Andy is, 10 quid a pop.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah, like, he's kind of joking around in the car with Gwen and Reese. And then, like, Gwen kind of hard turns it into fuck Torchwood, I'm going to have an abortion kind of talk. And it's like, well, there goes that levity.
Right.
And then, like, it basically, basically from when Frobisher kills his family and himself onwards, it's basically just like levity. What's that? For like the rest of the episode, and it's like you kind of need to have breaks. I'm not saying we need like someone cracking jokes every couple of minutes, but like there needs to be like actual moments to breathe.
Actual moments to breathe, and maybe once in a blue moon, an actual ray of hope peeking through.
Yeah. Yeah, because like, I mean, I guess that's the difference between like, because like, you know what? Even comparing this to a drift is bleak right at the end. Like, there's like, it's never like comedic and lighthearted and then suddenly takes a hard right turn into bleak. But it's not bleak throughout. It's like, we're taking this very seriously. Okay, here's the bleak thing. And then the episode's over. Like, pretty much. Like,
And,
we
part
see
of
how
why
it affects people, and then
part of how Adrift gets away
yeah.
with that is it's not the season finale.
Yeah.
Although I shouldn't say, because a lot of season finales like to end bleak, but they usually have something
Right.
positive before them.
Yeah. And like, and even then, you know, it like, I feel like it just works better there. But again, yeah, that's like, the bleak stuff comes near the end of the episode. So after the episode ends, you've got time to process. Whereas this, you have Frobisher doing what he does, and then you basically have no time to. You maybe have like a
As
minute.
more and more
to
soul crushing things just keep piling down.
Yeah, it's just like you get like a minute to process, and then shit just goes way back up again. Well, not way back up, but like it just kind of keeps going, and it's like fucking hell.
Yes,
Like,
now you see where this serial gets its reputation from.
Yeah, this
pretty
last
much.
episode in particular is just a perpetual motion soul crushing machine.
Like, I
Honestly,
feel like in any other multi-part story in any show, Frobisher and his family would have been like the episode, the penultimate episode's cliffhanger.
oh yeah, it's
Maybe.
like friggin'. It's like friggin'. I mean, it's not really comparable, but it's like um Game of. You know what? I guess it's kind of similar. Like there's an episode of Game of Thrones. I think it's in the second to last season where like Cersei blows up the like fucking cathedral or whatever with everyone in it. And then her kid just kind of steps out of a window and plummets to his death. That is the end of an episode. So it's like she wipes out a whole ton of people. The kid jumps out of a window. And that's like the second to last episode of. I mean, that's also Game of Thrones, so you kind of know what you're getting into.
Right.
But like at the same time, that's at the end of the episode.
And
And you
that's even,
kind
I
of
mean, and that's
and you
even
kind of see it
partially
coming.
framed of like you've been in Cersei's head for the past few episodes. You've seen how like why she would, how she would feel toward the
Yeah.
cathedral, and you're almost, you're not necessarily cheering for her, but you kind of almost are.
Hmm.
Until Tommen killing himself
Yeah.
is not necessarily part of that.
Hmm. But yeah, and like, but again, that was also like I think that was like the episode before the finale. Because like that was Game of Thrones' like thing would just be like most of the time that big kind of game changing thing would happen in the second to last, and then the last episode would be an epilogue, effectively. So like that, you had time in the next episode to be like, okay, let's deal with all this now. Whereas this they just kind of Russell just keeps piling it on and piling. It's like maybe this would have been better off spread out instead of all shoved in like the tail end of the final episode.
Gotta wonder
All
if
right,
gotta
Matt.
wonder if you gotta wonder if these two end serials for Torchwood were just Russell T Davies venting on his frustrations.
I mean, considering the political aspect of this series, I think at least it has to be partially.
Yeah.
Like
Um,
he's saying something about the government here.
in particular, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I will say it was my problem for a couple episodes now, and it's still my major problem. Why the hell do we even like Captain Jack Harkness? How is he in any way redeemable? This man does so many horrific things, and his answer to all of it at the end of the day is, I get to run away. Wait, you can't just run away. Watch. Boop.
Mm. Yeah, this is the immediate thing when I mean we'll probably I don't know if anyone's gonna really cover this scene, so we can talk about it here. Like when his grandson is dying, all that came to mind was his reappearance in Fugitive of the Jadoon, and him being all like, "Hey, I'm back," and I'm just thinking, "Fuck you." Like, no, I will never be able to watch. Aside from like all
Yeah,
the baggage,
you just think of where
now,
him leaving there, and then showing up in that, and just going, "No, fuck you. You're an asshole.
yeah, like
You killed your grandson.
baggage,
You've tortured people for
mm,
multiple generations. F you. No,
yeah, like
you're a horrible,
again, like,
terrible person. How does the doctor even like you?"
mm, like baggage with the actor aside, it's also like, oh, this is absolutely ruined Jack for me. Like, yeah, he'd made decisions before
That were
that were like,
questionable, but they were at least understandable
yeah,
questionable. This is just like,
mm,
no. Even he said initially, there's got to be a better way, and instead he
yeah,
just
like,
goes with it anyways.
So I
Again.
figured we were gonna wait until we got to least favorite scenes to talk about that. But yeah, in any other Torchwood episode, there would have been something to come around and be like, oh, instead of using a kid, we can use Jack, and it's
Yes.
horrible for 5 minutes, but then it's okay, or
yeah,
something, or an adult, or if they can't use Jack, somebody would volunteer who for some reason works. And Jack would reveal it at the last minute because he didn't know if it would work or not. But that doesn't happen here. And that I think is a
mm,
big difference between this story and even a bleak Torchwood episode. I think they
mm,
normally are, they show their competence in those
mm,
moments that they don't show the rest of the time.
yeah,
By successfully pulling off the doctor stunt, by actually saving things. And I'm going to piggyback
mm,
on that a little bit because uh, what my least favorite thing about the episode is nobody wins. Um,
No.
yeah,
the prime minister doesn't win. Torchwood does not win. Jack doesn't win. Jack's daughter fucking doesn't win, even though she finally supported him after avoiding him all this time, which I guess she proved.
mm,
He kind of proved her right.
Yeah.
yeah,
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the fucking government gets taken over by the woman who came up with the idea of let's genocide the poor people.
mm,
Um, you know, the 4-5. I mean, obviously, the most of the villains.
Yeah, and
The,
the 456 at
biggest.
least gets blown
Should I
to
say the
smithereens
biggest
and
villain
sent back.
loses? The biggest villain
mm,
loses. I guess you would say that Green is the second biggest villain, but that his replacement is pretty much just as bad as him. We've
At least
seen
set up the
throughout
bad
the
things,
story.
even though they're trying to take it back now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like in
yeah,
this episode, like they try to give her that moment of I don't know why anybody would want to be in this room. I'm like, yeah, but you're also the person who just said nobody wants the poor people, so why don't we kill them? So you're not
mm,
exactly a redeemable, you're not exactly on the good guy's side of this.
mm,
So yeah, nobody wins except death.
Yeah,
mm.
Death is the only winner here. Death is having
Yeah,
a 5-course buffet.
Mm-hmm.
mm,
And as a sweet succulent dessert, he gets the life force of children. Rubs his
Even
hands together
Gwen,
greedily.
even Gwen gets the whole like you don't know Yanto at all. He was feeding you a line shit.
mm,
Yeah, which does also gotta make her feel god awful too, is that she can't
Mm-hmm.
say for sure
mm,
which was lies for him to feel better at work, or which was actual truth.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
All right. Anything else to say on those points? It kind of went from
Yeah.
it's
I feel
kind
like,
of well, yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, I feel like I have something else, but I might, just so we can move on, I might save that for a scene thing because I have
Okay.
If it's more of a
an
scene, then
idea
yeah,
for
probably
something.
better for that then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to favorite scenes, which in this episode is like slim pickings, kind of. I'm gonna go with the most obvious. At least to my mind, the most obvious, and that is just partly because of just the symbolism kind of it. Uh, Johnny leading the men to fight the military to buy
Yeah.
them time, and Andy very pointedly taking off everything that recognizably makes him a cop and joining in. Like I caught it the second time more than I did the first. He takes everything off that could, like, no badge, no
No badge, no
vest.
vest, no
I'm pretty
head,
sure he,
not even a
I'm pretty
not
sure
even a
he
baton, and he
takes,
just
like,
goes in there and coke clocks a guy.
yeah, like whatever belt he had on that had, like, other cop shit on. Basically, he's just down to like
His tactical
business
belt, yeah.
casual. Yeah, and just goes in there and starts swinging, and it's just like, I don't know, for whatever reason that just hits particularly in a
For,
good way.
yeah, for
That
a
it's just
background
like
character who's
he's
been there
like,
a
fuck
while, and he's mostly our jokey guy, just to see
yeah.
him just stand up and have his moment, even if he is just there to help slow them down and he knows he's going to get captured, just to start punching.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, to me, I mean, especially because this is a queer person writing this, the fact that he actively basically shoves off every cop related thing that he's wearing, and to be like, okay, fuck this, this ain't right, and then gets in, is like, yes, that's a good cop. The one good cop. And he probably won't even be a cop after this, for all we know.
Well,
Haven't
he's out
seen
of uniform,
Miracle
so
Day.
they
Maybe
can't do
he'll have
anything about
to
it.
get
That's the charm of that too.
Hmm.
He's not a good cop. He's a damn
Or at
fine
least
cop.
it's harder to.
Yeah, it's right. He's not in uniform. He's not on the clock.
All right. Anything else on that scene?
um, yeah, just it hit. I don't know why, but like both times that just like hit me in the gut. The fact, just I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just how the actor plays it, or just the significance of that character doing that. Like, that was one of the moments in this episode that almost made me cry for some reason. I can't even really explain why, but it's just something about that
Mm.
just hits really hard, especially now with like everything going on in the world that I'm much more aware of. It's just like something about this cop basically being like, fuck this ain't right, I've got to do something. It, like, resonates, especially
Mm.
in 2023.
All right, Matt. Favorite scene?
Yeah, I'll agree that there's favorite scenes that are a little few far between on this one. I will say one of the ones that also made me happy is Gwen calling up her husband, and he's out in the middle of nowhere, like right next to Parliament, just without their laptop. I'm freezing cold. What's up? Do I send it?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
The place they at least expect him to be right next to the government.
That's all on that.
Yeah, it's just a quick little funny note, and it was definitely a much needed light note in this particularly grim dark episode.
Gotcha.
Mm.
So I'm on the fence about my scene because it's really a favorite scene in the moment, but given the way the episode ends, it becomes a less favorite scene.
I think I know what you might be going for, or at least one of them.
And that's the scene where I swear I wrote down her name, didn't I? I think I wrote down her name and deleted it because it was oh, that's right. I only looked up her name when I was Googling her face. But when the paramilitary leader pulls Jack's daughter aside, and they basically they come up with the plan to free Jack, because he's the one who can beat the 456. Because if they're right, that's what's needed in the moment, and it's great to see, especially given how she was acting toward Jack in part one. It's nice to see her, supporting that aspect of him.
To be
and of
fair,
course, the downside being that this ultimately leads to Jack frying her son. So it's not a good outcome for her at all whatsoever.
And to be also fair, it's also a sign that the paramilitary lady is also not beyond being at least to some degree like the police officer earlier. However, again, yeah, it still leads to eventual grimdark, and it's just like, oh great,
right,
never mind.
It's effectively the end point of the character development for that military leader of being because she's been kind of showing in the, I forget if it was last episode or maybe episode 3, at the very least episode 4, she was starting to be okay, I need to know what the fuck's actually, it was last episode.
Last week we talked about it.
I need to know what the fuck's actually going on here. And then she gets clued in, she starts to change her mind about shit, and now she's okay, because without prompting, she's showing Jack's daughter all of this,
right? And then literally the next scene she's in, she's like, sacrifice a kid? Yeah, seems reasonable.
No problem. One for the many.
She's not as bad as the guy standing next to her, who seems to be gleefully delighting in it.
Right.
Yeah, it's very, she's being, I guess, to make a Doctor Who comparison, and it's a flip of a Doctor Who comparison, but it's almost like she's the opposite of Sarah Jane in Genesis of the Daleks, in that do I have the right moment, where she's being the, to save millions you can't doubt it kind of sort of a thing, where she doesn't want, she's very clear by how she reacts when the kid is being fried, that it's I don't really want to do this, but one, to save needs of the many kind of a moment,
right?
She's we don't really have much of a choice, but she's also not taking any action until he says, gives the okay, basically. She's not yeah, fuck you, grab the kid, kind of a thing.
So that was my favorite scene that ended up in negative. So least favorite scenes.
Okay, so we talked about it before, but I'm now going to propose an alternative. Clem shouldn't have died in episode 4. Clem should have been there to make the decision and have agency and go, I'll do it.
I like that.
You don't need a kid.
So much better.
I'll do it.
The only downside to that is that Clem's death is what gave Jack the idea of what to do in the first place.
Well,
so you would have needed something in that place.
What should have happened is that
there's enough bad about this ending that adding in that hole, I think, still makes, even if we didn't fix it, that your suggestion would still improve the episode.
Mm.
Actually, I
The
have
what we
another idea
what
to improve it. Through the signal that goes through Clem, because Clem's still an adult, it should have still been able to go through Jack.
I mean, the idea was that Clem had a connection to the 456 still.
Although, yeah, I mean,
But it's still, even
was
if it's just the signal, you should be able to send that signal back either way through anybody, as long as.
oh, that's right. Jack is shielded against psychic attacks, isn't he? So he wouldn't, like, even though he was there when Clem was a child, he wouldn't have taken the full brunt of the signal the same way he did.
Oh, and alternatively, an issue we had last time, I think it was mainly something Matt brought up, was like how they gas Tem's house. Okay, they used that auditory signal on everyone in the house. It was like on everyone in the building, and that's what kills them all. That could have worked.
Okay, so that would have gotten rid of Matt's concern about the how did they introduce the virus last episode. Although it still would have had them have the power to hack into the security system, which I'm personally fine with, but I know Matt took issue with.
Yeah,
Because
I
they
mean,
didn't
you
explain it.
still have to.
They didn't even hand wave
mean,
it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to explain how that one old guy survives, but you could maybe just have it be that it was very targeted to, like, they were like, well, he's been kind of useful thus far, so we'll let him live. But like literally everyone else, or he just, I don't know, he just somehow manages to shield his ears from it. He manages to get to a place that shields him from it enough that he doesn't die or something. But everyone else ends up dead. Like there are ways to finagle it. Like, again, you could just have it be that they chose to avoid him and Jack just doesn't get affected because he's Jack. Or even if he does, he pops right back up anyway. Like with the gas. Which, there would have been a more brutal way for Yanto to go, but it was not exactly like he went gently into that good night anyway. So, it still would have worked. And again, yeah, that frees up Clem to show up and be with Jack and be like, I'll do it. Like, I'll make my life mean something. Let him have some agency in his death instead of just being this sad, rambling, homeless guy who dies very brutally for ultimately no reason because they decide he's disposable. And
and it wasn't like he didn't really do anything to provoke them either. They were just like, yeah, we happen to notice that he still exists, and that's enough reason to kill him. And even at the time, like, it wasn't like worst scene worthy, but it was just like, what exactly is the point of, like, if they were going to do this, why didn't they do it 2 episodes ago or an episode from now? Like, it was an arbitrary moment because he had served his purpose in the plot. And then they realized, I guess, that they needed to show off this weapon before episode 5.
Yeah. Like, yeah, it could even just be, a matter of realizing, like, you could even have them fake us out. Like, they grab the kid, they're about to put him in place, and then Clem just is like, no, fuck this, I'll do it. Like, you don't need a kid, I'll do it. And maybe it's a matter of, like, or like, because even then, you can still have the relationship between Jack's daughter and Jack be frayed even more than it already was because he was willing to go there without killing the kid. and it just being a matter of that's why we never see her again, because like, yeah, it's like you came that close to doing that. Fuck you. Um, and yeah, like again, I feel like it just would have like somehow finagling the story around to make it Clem that does it would have been so much better because it would have given him some agency in his death instead of just being, you know, the side character, really tragic homeless guy who ends up dying brutally. And it's just like, yeah. They could have done something with that, and they just decided, nah, we're gonna go. Like, again, this is like Torchwood at its worst again, where it's like, what's the grim dark option? I know, we'll kill an innocent child. You know?
Kill a child in order to save the rest from an eternity of torture being a drug supply.
It's from the same book of writing as the Game of Thrones, the TV show.
Pretty much.
So the actual scene itself you were focusing on was the elephant in the room scene, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to be clear on that, because I was like, wait, was it last week's episode that you were talking? No, you're talking with Steven.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So Matt, what was your scene? I'm sure that scene was probably one of yours, but do you have another?
Oh, this one I take particular umbrage with. Hand Captain Jack his device. So yeah, guys, I'm just gonna run away from all my problems because life on Earth sucks. Bye. When are you coming back? Never. Bye bye. Boop. But you can't run away. Shit, he ran away.
Captain Jack turning into Ford Prefect.
I think I take umbrage with that. I think Ford is less of a runaway on these kind of things than that Jack is now at this point. Holy smokes.
Yeah. It's...
Talk about making bad decisions and not being able to live with them.
I should point out, I guess I should point out in context, the very next time we see Jack is the doctor slipping him a note of the name of the person he's drinking next to so that he can pretend to be psychic.
Which, once again, why are we liking this guy?
And, you know, this to me shows the difference between how Chibnall handles Jack in Torchwood versus Russell. Because I'm pretty sure Adrift was written by Chibnall, and Gwen is fucking pissed at him in that episode. Whereas here, she's like basically ready to forgive him for everything. And it's like, what? Like, I could get, like, I don't know, she should be so much more pissed at him. Like, yes, he, like, ultimately in the grand scheme of things, he saved all those children. But still, I feel like Gwen should at least be conflicted and not just, you know...
Oh, hey, it's alright. Come on back. We'll give you tacos.
Yeah. It's... Just like, yeah, being that blindly loyal still when they're the only two left is just like, no. That's not realistic. That's very art. Like, that's very this era. I don't know if he'd pull that now, but that's very this era Russell. Just a blind loyalty to someone that doesn't really deserve it at this point.
Yeah. All right, Bill.
All right, so for my least favorite scene, of course, obviously we have the Steven one. But if I'm going to, of course, be more original, and this is another character whose name, I'm not even sure if it must have been mentioned on screen. And of course, Wikipedia doesn't have the cast list. Why does Wikipedia not have the cast? Oh, because they don't have it as a list. They only list
Is
the most
it
important people. Damn it. Okay.
IMDb boy.
But
is it the scene at the end with the politicians? You mean? Is what
yeah.
you're trying to think of? Bridget is the name of Frobish's
No,
assistant.
yeah,
If
not
that's what you're
Bridget.
thinking of.
Um,
The other lady.
yeah. So
Yeah,
when
yeah, I forget if they list her name anyway.
sorry. Here we go. When Denise Riley takes over the government, and we're supposed to treat it as this big victory for Bridget or for people in general. Uh, as I mentioned before, Riley was the person who initially said, "Well, what about all these people we don't want to be alive?
Yeah.
Why don't we kill them? The people who don't get good grades, they should be the ones who die because they don't get good grades and they don't contribute to society." And then in this episode, she's the one who comes in and says, "Okay, you know, basically celebrate that we're gonna have her instead of Prime Minister Green." And that's Green is getting his comeuppance, and that's all good for Bridget and for the people of the world and the UK. And it was your plan the whole time. So maybe he was a little more sociopathic about it. But you were really not, like, you were 1% better. So if he was a 5, you were a 6. That's not any better. And the scene is framed as if she was fucking the opposition who was swooping in to make a, it goes back to what I was saying about, I wish just one person had fought against that. Because imagine if that one person had been the person with enough support to take Green's place. That would have made this a really strong scene. And
So
maybe that was Russell's
basically,
point. Maybe, like we were talking about the political point and about nobody wins. Maybe Russell was saying, yeah, he's going to go, but the exact same person is going to take his place.
Also,
Maybe
something
that
I've
was
said
Russell's point.
during voting is,
But
yes, the new boss, same as the old boss.
right. Yeah, so maybe that was Russell's point, but it does not make for great storytelling. Unless it's is literally just a cautionary tale, a tale saying everybody should be nihilist. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the way I read that scene was it was very... It didn't feel celebratory to me. I mean, I definitely get where you're coming from, but to me, it was just kind of like there's no moment.
There's
and maybe
a
it's
win,
just because
but
the
it's
music,
not really a win.
yeah, maybe it's because the music doesn't kind of rise to make it sound victorious.
No, it doesn't do that. That's true.
It's very yay his downfall, but also not much is really going to change.
Yeah, when I say it was written to celebrate, I was saying more more from a dialogue sense. Like, she says the things that you would want the hero to say in that moment. As if we could forget what she had been before. But you're absolutely right in that. I mean, I don't think there's celebratory music anywhere in this episode. Like, nobody fucking wins. It's all terrible.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, I think it's like, yeah, it's funny because it's one of those scenes where you think there's gonna be, like, in anything else, this would probably be the thing where it's like, yeah, like maybe the deputy PM was a great person and was the one who was like, no, this is fucked up. It's like, well, you're out, so now I'm in. But yeah, And it's funny because
The deputy PM was Nick Briggs, and I don't think he was that different. I'm
Nope.
trying to remember like what
well, yeah, he
lines
was
he
the
had.
he was the one who was like, well, the population's going to be 9 billion in like X amount
That's
of
right.
years.
He was
Look
the
on the
one like
bright side,
politically
we're going to be less
strategizing,
overpopulated by silly people.
and
Yeah,
he's not even in this episode.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think,
not that I
No,
remember
he's
which is
seeing.
not.
kind of weird in retrospect.
If he is, he's in like the background with no dialogue, so you don't notice him.
Maybe he's in a body bag.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's not on the cast list. I don't know if he was in the building when. Yeah, he might have been one of the people killed by the virus. I'm not sure if they ever clarified who was.
No, I mean, I think like a lot of people from the last episode aren't who were in that meeting weren't present in this, so it might just be they've pared it
Yeah.
down to the
I
absolute
would,
necessary.
I would have to go back and see if he was one of the people trying to break the door and by the break the door and unleash the virus out to the population. Granted, I wouldn't expect him to think super logically in that situation, but I'm like,
Right.
fucking really. But yeah, he might have been one of those people.
Mm.
All right. Any other comments before we go on to final thoughts?
Nah.
No.
All right. So Alex's final thoughts.
Yeah, like I said it before we started when I was talking with Bill, and like this episode more than any other in this story, this feels like it needs like all of the content warnings you can muster. Like, good lord, like this, it just like it feels like the thing with Frobisher happens, and from then on, it's just all downhill, just plummeting into the abyss, and it's like, wow. Not that this serial has been like a great time emotionally to begin with, but like it was very like Torchwood when it's good, and now it's Torchwood when it's trying too hard to be edgy and adult. Like not as bad as it can sometimes be, because as I was talking with Bill before, it's like, you know, series 1 has this really big bug up its ass about a lot of sexual assault related stuff, whether it's Owen assaulting people in literally the first episode, several episodes revolving around assault and all that and all that. And it's just, you know, you need trigger warnings all over this fucking show, but this episode especially is just like, god damn. The only thing I can compare this to in levels of bleakness in Torchwood, as far as making me feel like shit after I've watched it or listened to it, is that one I forget what the name of it is, but that one Big Finish story that both me and Matt were just like, nah, this ain't it.
Although that
With the
last
Eighth
Sarah Jane
Doctor.
episode that we did.
Sort of, yeah, but it was like there was that one Eighth Doctor Big Finish thing.
Oh,
with, like,
the
Was it
squeaky
the one
body
with the
horror.
bugs and the body horror?
The body
Uh,
horror with
that
the
one,
people.
yeah,
Yeah,
was
that was
the one
yeah.
where the woman,
The Creed of the
one-
Crumman.
Yeah.
yeah, where the woman gets turned into like a birthing machine, effectively. Like that shit. It's that level of like,
Oh,
no,
hell
thank
no.
you.
Or the Republican ideal of a woman, in other words.
Yeah. It's like that. It to me, it feels that level of just, I feel like shit after having experienced this, rather than like Adrift, which Adrift hits very hard, and I think that made me cry, but like, I don't know, it didn't make me feel like shit compared to this. So it's just like, I don't hate it, but it's just, I can't bring myself to say that this is like great or like really good, because like, while I can kind of get what Russell's going for, God damn, mate, you did not have to be this bluntly bleak about it. Like, again, like, certain things could have happened and it still would have been dark, but not as bleak. And again, if it was gonna be this bleak, then you shouldn't have saved literally all the bleak shit for the last fucking episode. I think that's what's making me kind of angry. It's just that, like, all of the bleak stuff happens in, like, the last 20 minutes. And it's like the bleakest stuff in the whole story. If this had been spread out, so we would have been like, okay, we're getting prepared for this is what you're in for. Sort of like how, you know, as dark and edgy in some cases as Game of Thrones can be, there are moments where you're like, yeah, we're kind of letting you know what you're in for before, like, exceptionally bad shit happens. Usually. Or it's like off screen or implied, usually that kind of thing. But it's just like, ooh, this I feel like this isn't going to incredibly suffer in ratings when we get to that, but like for me anyway. But this is just a thing where it's like, I've watched it once. Well, I've technically watched every episode twice. I don't think I'm going to watch Children of Earth again unless I absolutely have to or someone pays me.
All right.
Like, I'm probably done.
I'm pretty sure every Torchwood rewatch I've done on my own time was just seasons 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, Matt, final thoughts.
This episode needs an enema. Seriously, it just goes from bleak to grim dark to even more grimmer dark, and it just keeps tumbling down the hill. You're waiting for that turnaround, and instead the momentum machine's just going faster and harder in the wrong direction. And just when you think there might be a chance that it might save itself somewhere, no, we're just going to make the worse. We're going to take this sucker from 9 to about 11. Because our speakers go to 11. I'm full of references tonight, too. Don't know if anyone gets them. When I said that game it stinks earlier, that's a Mystery Science Theater reference, and now I just made a Spinal Tap reference and a Batman reference. So I'm just full of it today. But yeah, just
anything else?
I think that about covers the easy thoughts on this one. Ugh.
All right. So that leads to my final thoughts, and yeah, this I feel like I repressed most of this episode, or at least it's definitely not a lot of stuff that you go out of your way to re-enjoy or remember, things of that nature. I definitely had completely forgotten Steven's whole thing, although I remember Rand mentioning it at some point, and I kind of had repressed that again afterward. So yeah, that it's because it doesn't feel like a Doctor Who property, like Doctor Who or Torchwood, either one. You would really expect it to seem like that was going to happen, and then pull out the win in some capacity after the fact, and they really failed to do that, and that really hinders this as being in the same universe. And yeah, I wouldn't call it grimdark just because it doesn't have the aesthetic. It's there's more to grimdark than just being grim. It doesn't have everything that comes. It has the look of a normal Torchwood episode, but isn't. But fails to reach that. Which, to be fair, Torchwood fails on important things from time to time.
Yeah.
It says a lot that we've barely talked about Frobisher in this episode, because that was not the grimmest thing to happen, and it fit the tone.
It's fairly dark, but still,
although ultimately it actually was a pointless sacrifice, because that means that 3 kids died. But Frobisher thought
Mm-hmm.
it was going to be millions. Um,
Hmm.
and I feel like there was another character. Oh, that's right. The fucking guy that we barely talked about. He was like the manager of the building or something. He gave off so many vibes throughout the story that I was really thinking he was like a 456 plant
Oh, the
because
creepy
just
scientist
Yeah.
guy.
fucking was he a
Hmm.
scientist? I thought at some point they said he was like the janitor, and I was like, he's not just a janitor, but maybe I
Well, he was the
maybe
one
I
that
misheard that
helped
scene.
Frobisher figure out the 456 signal stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Like
maybe
he'd apparently been working on the signals for 40 years or
right. I
something. He
remember that.
claimed.
So I was like, maybe the scene where I thought he was introduced as like maintenance. Maybe I misheard that scene, and I was like, I knew he was more than that. But I
Hmm.
wasn't quite sure
If
his
anything,
name
was a
to look him
cover.
up.
Yeah.
Maybe that's true. He might have been pretending to have a less of a role than he did. But
Hmm.
throughout this story, he's just seemed more like giddy, like he's really
Yeah.
enjoying what's going on, and it's really like
Hmm.
you think he is going to be a big part of things, and in the end, it's just no. He's
Hmm.
just a psychopath who happens to be with us for the ride.
He's just a creep
Yeah.
that's constantly sitting in the background,
Mhm.
enjoying all the grim things
Yeah.
going on around
Which,
him.
which again, that might be RTD saying something about the British government as a civil servant.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Um, because I mean, I'm not sure at what point the BBC officially became like independent versus a government entity. Uh, I don't know that much about UK politics in that respect, especially. But yeah, so that guy was weird. And again, from a storytelling perspective, I thought that there'd be more to do with him. Other
But
than
yeah,
just saying, "Hey, why don't you kill
if
your
there was, they
grandson?"
just kind of eliminated it for time.
Right. Um.
Hmm.
So I guess that's the end of my thoughts, and we move on to ratings. Ratings for Children of Earth, days 1 through 5, starting with Alex.
You know, I could be mean and score this really low, but as bleak as this episode is, I still think the story as a whole is bare minimum at least like good. So the meanest I can really be is giving this a 4. But I can't justify giving it any higher than that.
Mm-hmm. So 4.0.
Yep.
Okay. Matt.
I'll give you acting is good in this, despite anything else going on. I'll also give you that even though this isn't a very visual intensive story, they did smart things like keeping the monster that they weren't so sure about in the fog. So you just barely saw enough of it to be creeped out by it and make an effective, creepy looking villain. However, because of all of that, I will say the writing stinks. It starts off really good, and then by about the midway point, you start to realize something's very wrong here, and then by the last point, you're just like, oh, fuck this. I'm trying to think of what other stuff that I would cover here, but that takes it down pretty solid notch for me. The visuals are low effort, the acting is high, and the writing is at best built to make you just want to hate the story, and in particular one of the main characters. And yet we keep continuing to treat this main character like he's some perfectly innocent, happy-go-lucky good boy, and that's couldn't be further from the truth.
So we're back to final thoughts.
But yeah, so to summarize my score, I'm going to be giving this like a 2.5.
Okay. 2.5. So I'm similar to Alex in the sense that I cannot give this higher than a 4.0. Um, and in a lot of ways, it feels like it should get that because we've been saying really great things about a lot of aspects of the writing, the acting, the effects. But ultimately, what's going to make a difference for me is that uh, do I recommend rewatching or watching this story? And I can't say that I recommend this at a 4.0 level. So I can't give it a low grade, but I have to knock it down from that 4.0 to a 3.5.
Yeah, much like
Yeah,
me, I
that's
can't
fair.
give this a 2 because it's better than a 2, but man,
Mhm.
there are some elements here that are just like, oh, hell no.
Mm.
So that puts this at the final rating of a 3.33 out of 5.
And almost
Um,
mediocre. Mediocre.
and the master sheet, I guess I'm in charge of the master sheet now, so I will
Yep.
need to update that in time. It has not been updated since Rand retired. Um, so where would this fit on the rankings with a 3.33? That puts it in the range of 336 out of 444 things currently on our sheet. We've reviewed about 5 since then. It is on par with no spin-off material. Well, yeah, it's on par with the Space Pirates. Slightly better than Class for Tonight We May Die. We Might Die. Um, and there's no. Oh, and then it's better than Canine Sirens of Ceres and Canine Regeneration Liberation. It is not as good as Canine: The Fall of the House of Griffin, Sarah Jane Adventures: The Temptation of Sarah Jane Smith, Canine the Corvin, or Torchwood: They Keep Killing Susie. So that is our final rating on Children of Earth. Please let us know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode or how you rate Children of Earth in its entirety. Don't forget to like the video if you've listened this far, and subscribe on YouTube to get our exports for every stream, or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we start streaming. Next time, we look at the alternate history of what might have been the conclusion of Doctor Who, with Death Comes to Time, starting with Episode 1, Planet of Blood, written by Colin Meek, and starring Sylvester McCoy as the Doctor and Sophie Aldred as Ace. We'll see you then.
See you in about 3 weeks.